Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, while I learn this truth from and well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Until I say shalom. Come to you back with another lesson through the Spirit. And the title for this was going to be The Strait Gate. And the strait gate is the walk that us, during this truth and this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, knowing that we're the true nation of Israel, comprised of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and Israelite foreigners, they may look like the heathens, but ultimately their lineage goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because this truth is only going to resonate if you're an Israelite. It's not going to resonate if you're a heathen. You can't be a spiritual Israelite like these apologetic Christians love to claim. No, ultimately this is a bloodline thing, and if your lineage don't go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then this truth isn't for you. Because ultimately you're going to have Israelites coming looking like all the nations. You're going to have them coming in looking like Chinese, like Arabs, Hawaiians, whatever nation it may be. But ultimately this truth resonates within your spirit. But this walk, this truth, this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding ultimately wasn't given unto the whole nation of Israel, because many have been called, but only a few are going to be chosen. And Lord willing, we're a part of that number. We've been called, but we don't know if we're chosen. That's why ultimately we call ourselves the hopeful elect, because we hope to be a part of the elect, but we won't know till the end comes, which is going to be the destruction of America, Babylon the Great, by the way of the intercontinental ballistic missiles. Through that fire, it's going to be destroyed again, but by the way of fire, because the first time the earth was completely destroyed, it was by the way of water, because ultimately the earth isn't going to be fully destroyed, but the end of this current age, which is being ran by Esau, Edom, self-proclaimed white man, and we know that his time to ruling upon the planet earth is coming to an end, but he's not going to let his kingdom go so easily. And us knowing that, we know that he's going to come down with that great wrath. He's going to come with that sword, with his military, with his UN troops. And therefore, some of us might have to be martyrs for this truth, lose our life. We may be put in detention centers, ultimately to test and try our faith. But, Lord willing, we're a part of that number. We're going to endure till the end. Even if we have to lose our life, ultimately we're going to be risen up with Yahushai first, because ultimately we're not, a lot of people believe that after you die, that's it, but no, you're just sleeping, and eventually you get reincarnated back to the earth. But this is the last time where we're going to have to, lay our lives down for this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, for the truth, for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. And that's something that most Israelites aren't willing to do. They're not willing to walk that straight gate. They're not willing to give up this life for the one to come, for the kingdom of heaven. That's why it's the straight gate. Only so many can walk in there at a time. It's not meant for the whole nation of Israel. That's why ultimately 2/3 of the nation of Israel, they're still asleep. They're still in that spirit of slumber and that spirit of mirth, not really knowing what's going on around the planet Earth, not knowing that there's imminent destruction, coming soon. So I'm gonna get this first scripture. This is Matthew chapter 7 verse 13, and it reads, "Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction." That's right. The hopeful elect, we're going through that straight gate right now. We're going to that path of difficulty, catching hell. Having the whole world hates us, ultimately because of the message that we're coming with. We're coming with that message that this place is going to be destroyed, that 2/3 of the nation of Israel, comprising of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, aren't going to make it, ultimately because you're rebellious. You refuse to repent. You refuse to take rebuke. Telling Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, he's gonna go down. All this is coming with persecution, and we're already being persecuted. But how much more when we're made public enemy number one? When our faces are on TV, you got wanted posters all over saying, "Hey, these guys are the T word." How much more then? Because right now, you got a lot of Israelites that it looks cute to be an Israelite. You got the fringes on. You get to have different wives. You got your face out there in the public. But that's those other Israelite camps that think that being an Israelite, it's all about being cute. But no, ultimately, it's truth. A lot of people don't know what they're involved in. They don't know that this devil, Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, is going to come down with that great wrath. That he's going to come down with that sword. He's going to he's going to delete, he's going to unalive a lot of Israelites, because ultimately he wants to get to the true man of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. But most of these Israelites, when that pressure comes, when that squeeze fully comes, a lot of them are going to put their garment away. They're going to tell, Yahweh, or they're going to tell Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, that they don't believe in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai anymore. They're going to let go of their faith, ultimately because they really wasn't a part of this. They were a part of that broad way which led to destruction. They weren't really in a straight gate, because when things get difficult, that's when a lot of people tap out. Because right now, you still could go to your jobs, work your 9 to 5s, go out with your women, have a drink at the bar, go to the store and buy groceries. But how about when all hell breaks loose, when we're in Jacob's trouble, when there's no food in the groceries, when you haven't ate in 3 days? A lot of Israelites, they're gonna stop believing in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, ultimately because they really didn't believe. They really weren't invested. They didn't fully put their trust and faith in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. That's why a lot are going to take that broad way. A lot of them are going to go down to Esau, Edom for help, and take that Karagma, take that MOTB. And ultimately they're going to be destroyed for not trusting in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. This is Matthew chapter 7 and verse 13 at the bottom. And many there be which go therein at. And that's 2/3 of the nation of Israel. They're going to take that broad way, which is going to lead to destruction, which is going to lead them to take that MOTB, go down to Egypt for help, and get destroyed for refusing to take the straight and narrow path. Because even if you have to lay down your life and be a martyr for this truth, ultimately you're going to be risen up first. You'll have to lose you'll have to lose this life for the one to come, for the kingdom of heaven. It says right here, verse 14, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and many be few there be to find it. Exactly, just like in Romans 11 and 7, I'm gonna get it real quick. I don't want to butcher it. This is Romans chapter 11 and verse 7. What then? Israel had not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. So only the elect, us are the hopeful elect. We've received, the keys to immortality, the keys to eternal life. But the rest of the nation of Israel, the 2/3, ultimately they were blinded by Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, because he doesn't want them to receive it on this side. Yeah, the whole nation of Israel is going to receive those new bodies, having the law, statutes, and commandments written in our inward parts. But right now is only the 1/3 that's going to get delivered out of Babylon the Great, out of America. The rest of the 2/3 are going to get destroyed, because it wasn't given unto them. It was only given unto the elect on this side. That's why majority of the nation of Israel, they're walking that broad way that's going to lead to destruction. This is Acts chapter 14 and verse 22, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith. And that's right. We're constantly being edified, constantly building up our faith, by the trials and tribulations that we have to go through on a daily basis, walking the straight gate. And that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of heaven. And that's right. That's part of that straight gate. It's not going to be an easy walk. It's not going to be a cakewalk to the kingdom of heaven, to receiving that crown set up on your head by Yahweh Shai. Because it's not an easy path. It's not an easy way. It's supposed to be straight and narrow. But these other Israelite camps and these Christian churches, these Roman Catholic churches, they're not teaching their congregation that to receive the kingdom of heaven is going to come with a lot of hell, a lot of trials and tribulation. They don't even teach their congregations that there's going to be a Jacob's trouble, there's going to be a martial law, there's going to be an hour of temptation. In their minds, they think that the kingdom of heaven is just gonna pop into the air, out of nowhere. But no, it's gonna come with a lot of pain that we're gonna have to go through to receive that crown. This is 2 Ezra chapter 7 and verse 6. There is also another thing: a city is builded and set up on a broad field, and is full of all good things. And what's that city that's builded and set up on a broad field? That's the kingdom of heaven. That's what we're looking forward to. We're not looking forward to be here in America for another 10, 20, 30, 50 years, let alone 100 or 500, 1,000. No, we're looking forward to the kingdom of heaven being established upon the planet Earth, where righteousness is going to be pushed out. We're going to have those new bodies, the law, statutes, commandments written in our inward parts, never to sin ever again. But only the elect are looking forward to that. The rest of the 2/3, they're looking for America to continue. Verse 7, the entrance thereof is narrow and is set in a dangerous place to fall. That's right. That's how dangerous this straight gate is. It's very narrow. Only one person can walk into there at a time. Like as if there were fire on the right hand and on the left a deep water. So that's how he's describing it. And you're walking through that path. There's fire on the right hand, on the right side, and then on the left is a deep water. So you can't really be stumbling out here too much, because you'll fall in that fire or you'll fall in that water. Like 2/3 of the nation of Israel, they pretty much already fallen in that fire or fallen in that water. Just like before, the flood took away, all the whole earth, but except for 8 people, Noah and his family. And then now you're gonna have that fire that's gonna take a lot of people out, especially here in America, where that great destruction is gonna take place, but also that great deliverance. Verse 8, and one only path between them both, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could but one man go there at once. And that's a part of this truth. The straight and narrow walk, the straight gate, is only meant for you to be able to walk it. Ultimately we have the brotherhood. We have the Akim, we have the Akwath that we could go to counsel for, seek advice, get built up and get edified. But ultimately, each one of us is going to have to go through that straight gate. We're going to have that garden, of Gethsemane moment, just like Yahweh Shai did. We're going to have to all go through that, just like Yahweh Shai did. Verse 9, if this city now were given unto a man for an inheritance, if he shall never pass the danger set before it, how shall he receive this inheritance? And that's right. We have to go through that straight gate. We got to go through that hell, those trials and tribulation, being persecuted, being hated by our own people, being persecuted by Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man. That's all part of the hell we have to go through. That's part of our baptism that we have to go through to receive that crown, to receive that inheritance, to receive the kingdom of heaven here upon the planet Earth. It's not going to be an easy walk. Because majority of the nation of Israel, they pretty much sold out all these celebrities, these rappers, these ball players, these Israelites that have camps, leaders that have sold out the Esau, Edom, having the 501c3. They really can't teach their congregation, because ultimately they sold out. They wanted their consolation on this side. They wanted the kingdom of heaven on this side. But ultimately, a lot of them have received their consolation. But what did Yahweh Shai say? Woe unto you who have received your consolation. Because ultimately they received it on this side. So on the next side, they're going to be a 2/3 are going to have to be brought back through the loins of the elect, because they sold out. They couldn't wait. They couldn't go through that straight and narrow path right now. They chose the broad way, which is going to lead to destruction. This is Matthew chapter 16 and verse 24. Then said Yahushua unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. That's ultimately what you have to do when you come into this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You have to deny yourself. You have to forsake this life for the one to come. And that's not saying, just quitting your job, leaving your family, getting in a dark room and being in a lotus position. No, that's talking about forsaking this life. Whatever you were looking to get on this side. Maybe you were looking to be a rapper or an NFL player, or get a business and make millions. Ultimately, you have to forsake that for Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, for Yahweh Shai, to follow Yahweh Shai, just like the disciples did back then. Whatever occupations they had. Some were fishermen, some were tax collectors. They left that to follow Yahweh Shai. But majority of the nation of Israel, they're not willing to forsake their careers, their jobs. If they're rappers, they have a large amount of wealth. Because you got a lot of rappers out here that claim that they're Israelites, from Kendrick Lamar, Kodak. But ultimately, what did they do with the truth? They didn't leave all those riches behind, all that fame and wealth. They're still out there, performing, having concerts, having their face on TV 24/7. That's how you know they didn't forsake this life for the one to come. Verse 25, for whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. And that's right. 2/3 of the nation of Israel, they're going to seek to save their life on this side, because they're out here starving. They haven't drunk water in 3 days. They're famished. But ultimately, they're going to have to take that charagma to be able to buy and sell and eat their micro seed. But ultimately, that's a stumbling block, because in their minds, they're going to think that, hey, I took this charagma, took this micro seed to be able to buy and eat, to buy and sell, to be able to buy groceries. But a lot of them, even though they took that charagma, the micro seed, they still aren't going to be able to eat. Because ultimately the servants of Yahweh Shemiah are going to eat and drink in that day. When there's a famine, when there's pestilences, when there's plagues, when there's destruction, only his servants, the prophets, are going to be able to buy, salaki, to eat and drink. The rest of the nation of Israel, they're going to be out here starving to death, being put to death by the sword. Verse 26, for what is a man profited if he shall gain a whole world, but lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? And a lot of Israelites out here have sold out. They sold out to Esau, Edom. So-called sold their soul, sold out their morals, their manhood to the devil, to Esau, Edom, to get a small crumbs, like in Lazarus, they want the crumbs out the table. That's what Esau, Edom gave to these Israelites on this side. They wanted a piece of his pie, but ultimately he just gave them crumbs. He gave them the smallest crumbs out of the pie. Because ultimately Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, he hates the nation of Israel. He despises. He wants to put us out of the planet Earth so he could get his birthright back. But we know that's not going to happen. This is Matthew chapter 10 and verse 22. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. And that's right. We're constantly being persecuted by these wicked Israelites, by these heathens, Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, putting new laws into effect to take the prophets out of the highways and byways, to take them out of the internet, the YouTube. This is all part of the persecution, all part of the straight gate. It's not going to be an easy path to the kingdom of heaven. We're going to constantly have to go through that hell, go through those trials and tribulations, be hated by our own family, people at work. But that's part of the straight gate. It's not supposed to be an easy path. But we have that hope that we're going to be delivered out of this incoming destruction that's about to take place upon the planet Earth. Mainly here in America, Babylon the Great, this is where that great fire, that great lake of fire, that second death, is going to be caused by the missiles is going to take place, but we have hope that we're going to be delivered out of that. But we're going to have to go through that straight gate, which is not going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy walk. But that's pretty much the point. Pray this is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from them well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the 1/3.